Virginia rises on the East Coast, with a history older than the nation itself. Colonial Williamsburg preserves the spirit of the first chapters. The same fields would later thunder with the clashes of the Civil War. But today, the story is very different. Its economy produces about $765 billion in GDP. That is larger than the entire economy of Argentina. More than 8.7 million people live here. The land offers Atlantic shores, fertile valleys, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. Northern Virginia is called Data Center Alley. More than 70% of the world's internet traffic flows through this region. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google operate vast campuses here. Northern Virginia alone now holds more hyperscale data centers than the entire country of Russia. Yet beneath this success, tensions remain. Virginia is a state divided between blue and red. People see the same problems, but demand very different answers. The arrival of migrants is welcomed by some and feared by others. The housing crisis makes life more expensive each year, and many wonder how long families can endure. Even the removal of Confederate monuments has led to protests. For some, those statues glorify slavery. For others, they are a memory of the state's past. Old echoes of the Civil War still shape these modern conflicts. So what will become of Virginia if it cannot choose its path forward? Can a state built on both pride and pain ever find unity? In this video, we will explore Virginia through its landmarks, events, successes, and struggles to uncover the real face of the Old Dominion. But before we start, here's a little question to entertain you. Virginia is one of the nation's top producers of which seafood? A. Lobsters. B. Oysters. C. Crabs. D. Shrimp. Share your opinion in the comments and patiently watch this video till the end to find out the truth. Number 10. Data Center Alley. Virginia is known for its rolling hills, historic towns, and fields that once defined early America. But in Northern Virginia, the landscape has changed. Where farms once stood, vast windowless buildings now rise. This is Data Center Alley, the unseen heart of the digital age. The scale is staggering. Loudoun County alone hosts more than 275 data centers, the highest concentration anywhere in the world. Together, they cover more than 30 million square feet of space, larger than the office towers of many major cities combined. Some are co-location facilities that lease racks to thousands of companies. Others are hyperscale complexes, designed for the biggest cloud providers. A growing number are artificial intelligence centers, built to train and run powerful models. Amazon Web Services dominates the market here with dozens of enormous campuses. Microsoft, Google, and Meta also operate massive sites, each one consuming as much energy as a city. Local reports even claim that over 70% of the world's internet traffic touches this region. That figure is debated, but it shows the scale of Virginia's role. Every video call, online purchase, or search may flow through these racks of servers. The question is, why Virginia? The answer lies in a mix of history and policy. In the 1990s, early internet backbone cables were routed through this area, linking federal networks and private companies. Once the fiber was in the ground, the growth accelerated. Virginia offered tax breaks, cheaper land, and relatively low electricity costs. Loudoun County streamlined zoning and welcomed the industry. These factors together made Northern Virginia the obvious choice for cloud giants. The benefits are clear. The industry delivers billions in tax revenue, funding schools and services. Thousands of well-paid jobs support engineers, electricians, and construction crews. Virginia's GDP now surpasses $765 billion, making it wealthier than Argentina. The data center boom is a key driver of this success. But the drawbacks are serious. Cooling towers consume millions of gallons of water, raising concerns about shortages similar to those in Arizona. Electricity demand is enormous, forcing utilities to expand grids and rely on fossil fuels. The constant hum of cooling fans disturbs neighborhoods once known for their quiet. Environmental groups warn of heat islands, where clusters of buildings raise local temperatures. Public health experts worry about long-term effects on air quality. Farmers complain that open land is disappearing faster than it can be replaced. Virginia's transformation from colonial fields to server farms is dramatic. The same soil that once fed plantations and carried the Civil War now powers the global cloud. The state stands at the center of the digital revolution, but at a cost that cannot be ignored. Are you from Virginia? How do you see the impact of data centers on your home state? Share your thoughts in the comments. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And now, let's dive in. Number 9. Chincoteague Pony Swim. Along Virginia's Atlantic coast lies a chain of barrier islands shaped by wind and tide. One of them, Assateague Island, is home to a herd of wild ponies that has lived here for centuries. Legends say their ancestors survived a shipwreck and swam to shore from a Spanish galleon. Others believe they were brought by early settlers and left to roam. Whatever their origin, the ponies have become a symbol of Virginia's coast and one of the state's most unusual traditions. The pony swim itself dates back to 1925, when the Chincoteague Volunteer Fire Company first organized it. Their goal was practical: raise money for equipment and at the same time keep the pony herd under control. What began as a small community effort soon grew into a celebrated annual tradition that now draws visitors from around the world. Each summer, the quiet town of Chincoteague transforms into the stage for a spectacle known around the world. Dozens of wild ponies are rounded up and guided across the channel between Assateague and Chincoteague. The swim itself lasts only a few minutes, but it draws tens of thousands of visitors who gather along the shoreline. Firemen guide the animals through the water while boats circle to keep them safe. When the ponies reach land, crowds cheer as the herd trots proudly through the streets toward the fairgrounds. The purpose of the pony swim is more than just entertainment. The herd on Assateague must be kept at a sustainable size to protect the fragile island ecosystem. Each year, foals are auctioned after the swim, raising money for the Chincoteague Volunteer Fire Company. That revenue funds local services and ensures the ponies continue to thrive without overwhelming the island. For the community, it is both a fundraiser and a celebration of heritage. The event has become a cultural landmark far beyond Virginia. Books like Misty of Chincoteague and films inspired by the ponies brought international fame. Families plan vacations around the swim, and hotels sell out months in advance. Local businesses rely on the surge of tourism, and the town takes pride in sharing a tradition that blends nature, history, and community spirit. Yet the tradition is not without its critics. Some animal rights advocates argue that rounding up the ponies causes unnecessary stress. Others say selling foals at auction treats wildlife as property. Supporters counter that the practice is carefully managed and the herd remains healthy because of it. The debate reflects a larger question about how old customs fit into the modern world. For Virginia, the Chincoteague Pony Swim is more than a show. It is a reminder that traditions can shape identity and bind communities together. At the same time, it forces people to consider the balance between heritage and responsibility. Do you see this event as a relic of the past or as a remarkable tradition worth preserving? Share your thoughts in the comments. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now, we move on. Number 8. Divided Legacy. In September 2021, crowds gathered in Richmond as cranes and work crews prepared to remove the towering statue of Robert E. Lee. For more than 130 years, the bronze general on horseback had dominated Monument Avenue, the largest Confederate memorial in the United States. When the statue was finally lowered from its pedestal, the cheers of some were matched by the anger of others. To many Virginians, it was a long overdue step toward justice. To others, it felt like an insult to family history and tradition. The removal of Lee's statue did not end the debate. It ignited it. The turning point came in 2020, After nationwide protests over racial injustice following the killing of George Floyd, demonstrators in Richmond gathered at the base of the Lee statue, covering it with graffiti and turning it into a focal point of anger. For more than a year, lawsuits tried to block the decision, but in September 2021, Virginia's Supreme Court cleared the way. Cruz finally lowered the statue, marking the end of an era and the start of a new chapter of debate. Soon after, dozens of other Confederate monuments across Virginia came down. Statues of Jefferson Davis and Stonewall Jackson were removed. Local governments moved quickly to erase symbols that had defined public spaces for generations. Officials explained that the monuments honored a cause built on slavery and had no place in modern America. Critics warned that removing them was rewriting history instead of confronting it. Every fallen statue became a new spark in an argument that reached far beyond the state's borders. The roots of the conflict run deep. During the Civil War, Virginia was the capital of the Confederacy, with Richmond serving as its political center. Key battles unfolded here, from the first clashes at Manassas to the final surrender at Appomattox. Monuments were built in the decades that followed as reminders of sacrifice and as statements of Southern identity. For more than a century, they stood largely unchallenged until the national reckoning over race and history brought them into the spotlight. Today, the legacy of that war divides communities as sharply as ever. For some Virginians, the statues represented oppression and the defense of slavery. For others, they were memorials to ancestors who fought and died on familiar soil. The debate reveals how two groups can look at the same stone figure and see two entirely different truths. The clash over monuments became a mirror for the state's wider political divisions. Virginia's struggle with its divided legacy is more than a question of monuments. It is about how a community chooses to remember its past while shaping its future. Are you from Virginia? Do you believe removing Confederate statues helps healing, or does it mean losing a piece of history? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. Number 7. Racing Virginia. On weekends when engines roar across Virginia, crowds pack the stands and millions more watch on national television. The state has earned the nickname Racing Virginia because it is home to two of the most famous tracks in the NASCAR world. Richmond Raceway and Martinsville Speedway are not just venues for sport, they are landmarks of American culture where speed, tradition, and community meet. Richmond Raceway opened in 1946 and today seats more than 60,000 fans. The track is known for night races that light up the sky and for finishes so close that seconds separate victory from defeat. Martinsville Speedway, built in 1947, is the oldest track still on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. It is small and tight, shaped like a paperclip, and it forces drivers into constant battles for position. For more than 70 years, Martinsville has remained a symbol of NASCAR's roots. Virginia has also produced drivers who carry the state's racing legacy onto the national stage. Denny Hamlin, born in Tampa but raised in Chesterfield County, is the only current NASCAR Cup driver from Virginia. He has collected dozens of wins, including multiple Daytona 500 victories, and is often ranked among the best active racers without a championship title. Peyton Sellers, another Virginian, built his career in late model racing and won the prestigious Virginia Triple Crown. Their stories show how the culture of racing runs deep in the state. The economic impact of these tracks is enormous. Race weekends bring in millions of dollars for hotels, restaurants, and local businesses. Thousands of jobs depend on the industry, from pit crews and mechanics to event staff. NASCAR in Virginia is more than sport. It is a seasonal lifeline for entire communities. Families pass down tickets for generations, and fans travel across the country to witness races at these historic venues. The history behind Virginia's racing culture is just as compelling. After World War II, local tracks began as dirt ovals where moonshine runners tested their cars. Over time, the sport grew into a national phenomenon, and Virginia remained at its heart. Martinsville survived as other tracks closed, keeping alive the tradition of racing where it first captured the imagination of post-war America. Yet racing also divides opinion. Some critics say NASCAR represents an outdated culture, tied too closely to the past. Others insist it is one of the last authentic expressions of American sport, a gathering that unites people across class and politics. For Virginia, the debate is more than symbolic. Racing remains both a cultural anchor and a business engine. So what about you? Would you like to sit in the stands and feel the thunder of engines at Martinsville or Richmond? Or do you see NASCAR as a tradition that belongs to another era? Share your view in the comments. Share this video on X and Facebook to help us grow. Every share counts. Number 6. Red or blue? Virginia today sits on the fault line of American politics. Elections here are fiercely contested, and the state often swings between parties. Suburban counties outside Washington lean blue, while rural areas in the West stay firmly red. Campaigns spend millions of dollars in Virginia because its results are seen as a preview of the national mood. In recent years, the state has elected both Republican governors and Democratic senators, proof of how finely balanced it remains. The contrast is visible in daily life. Northern Virginia suburbs fill with government workers, contractors, and high-tech employees who tend to vote liberal. In the coal towns of Appalachia, conservative values dominate conversations about work, energy, and family. College towns like Charlottesville add another layer, drawing younger voters and shaping cultural debates. The map of Virginia looks less like a single state and more like two different worlds pressed together. This sharp divide has made Virginia a testing ground for national issues. Immigration, housing costs, and the future of education have all sparked protests and legislative battles. One county may call for more funding for public schools, while another insists on tax cuts and parental control. The disagreements are not abstract. They play out in classrooms, courthouses, and town halls across the state. The irony is that Virginia once produced more presidents than any other state. 8 U.S. presidents were born here, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. In the early republic, Virginia dominated national politics, supplying leaders who shaped the Constitution and defined the presidency itself. Today, the picture is very different. The state no longer commands the same influence, but it reflects the nation's divisions more clearly than almost anywhere else. History lingers in subtle ways. The debates over Confederate monuments in Richmond echo through political rallies. The memory of civil rights struggles still shapes conversations about justice and fairness. Virginia's past as a powerhouse of American leadership stands beside its present role as a swing state torn between red and blue. For voters here, every election feels personal. The results decide not only who governs locally, but also how the state positions itself in the national debate. That weight has made politics in Virginia more heated, sometimes bitter, and often unpredictable. So what do you think? Does Virginia's deep split between red and blue make it a model of democracy in action, or does it risk pulling the state further apart? Share your opinion in the comments. Number 5. Virginia State Fair. Every September, the quiet fields near Doswell erupt with color, sound, and people. The Virginia State Fair turns Meadow Event Park into a temporary city where hundreds of thousands gather. Families drive in from across the state to taste local food, watch competitions, and celebrate the season. It is one of Virginia's longest-running traditions and a reminder of how agriculture, culture, and entertainment come together. The history of the fair stretches back to 1854, when it was first held in Richmond to showcase farming and industry. After moving several times and surviving wars, economic downturns, and even natural disasters, the fair found a permanent home at Meadow Event Park. This site is famous as the birthplace of Secretariat, the legendary racehorse that won the Triple Crown in 1973. Visitors today can still tour the stables while enjoying the fair, blending history with modern festivities. At the fairgrounds, the options are endless. Agricultural exhibits feature prize-winning cattle, sheep, and poultry. Farmers bring in giant pumpkins, tomatoes, and corn stalks to compete for ribbons. The Midway offers rides that spin, swing, and soar, while music stages host country, gospel, and rock performances. Culinary tents celebrate Virginia flavors, from smoked barbecue to peanut pie, and vendors sell crafts that highlight the state's rural traditions. The event also serves as an educational showcase. School groups come to see demonstrations of dairy farming, beekeeping, and horse training. Conservation groups explain how to protect Virginia's rivers and forests. For many young people, it is their first chance to see farm animals up close or ride a tractor. These moments connect generations, linking Virginia's farming past with its future. Economically, the fair is a giant. It draws more than 200,000 visitors each year, generating millions of dollars for local businesses. Hotels fill, restaurants stay packed, and vendors rely on the fair as their most profitable week. The event supports jobs for seasonal workers and strengthens tourism across the region. Yet, like many traditions, the fair faces challenges. Rising costs make it harder for small farmers to participate. Safety concerns have grown with larger crowds, and some critics argue that modern fairs lean too heavily on rides and concerts, drifting away from their agricultural roots. Organizers counter that the mix of old and new is what keeps the fair alive. Without change, they say, the tradition would fade. For Virginia, the State Fair is more than entertainment. It is a gathering point where city and country meet, where families create memories, and where the identity of the state is put on display. Would you consider the Virginia State Fair a timeless celebration of community, or do you see it as an old tradition struggling to keep pace with change? Share your thoughts in the comments. Number 4. Colonial Williamsburg. In the heart of Virginia stands one of the most ambitious living history projects in the world. Colonial Williamsburg is not just a museum, but a reconstructed town where the 18th century still feels alive. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors walk its cobblestone streets, step into workshops, and watch costumed interpreters recreate daily life from the colonial era. It is a place where the past is staged in the present, making history tangible in a way no book ever could. The origins of Williamsburg date back to 1699, when it became the capital of the Virginia colony. For much of the 18th century, it served as the political and cultural heart of British America. Leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Patrick Henry all walked here as students, legislators, and revolutionaries. When Richmond replaced Williamsburg as capital in 1780, the town slipped into decline. By the early 20th century, many of its buildings had fallen into ruin. The transformation came in the 1920s when Reverend W.A.R. Goodwin, rector of Bruton Parish Church, persuaded philanthropist John D. Rockefeller Jr. to fund a massive restoration. Together, they rebuilt more than 80 original structures and reconstructed hundreds more based on archaeological evidence. The project turned a decaying town into a national treasure and set the model for historical preservation across the United States. Today, Colonial Williamsburg covers over 300 acres. Blacksmiths hammer iron as they did centuries ago. Printers set type by hand. Farmers tend fields with tools of the 1700s. Guests can step inside the governor's palace, the Capitol, and taverns where revolutionary debates once shook the colonies. Actors play the roles of enslaved Africans, merchants, and politicians, forcing visitors to confront both the achievements and contradictions of America's founding era. The site also sparks conversations about how history is remembered. For decades, the focus was on the grandeur of colonial leaders. In recent years, the interpretation has expanded to include the lives of enslaved people, Native Americans, and women. These new narratives have drawn both praise for honesty and criticism from those who prefer a more traditional story. The tension reflects larger national debates about identity and memory. Economically, Colonial Williamsburg remains one of Virginia's largest tourist draws. It brings in hundreds of millions of dollars each year and sustains hotels, restaurants, and shops across the region. School groups from across the country travel here, making it a rite of passage for students studying the American Revolution. For Virginia, this site is more than a tourist attraction. It is a stage where history is constantly reinterpreted, where the legacy of the past meets the expectations of the present. Would you want to walk the streets of Colonial Williamsburg and see history acted out before your eyes? Or do you think this kind of reenactment turns the past into theater? Share your view in the comments. Number 3. Richmond Folk Festival. Each October, the banks of the James River in downtown Richmond transform into a stage for one of the largest celebrations of traditional music in America. The Richmond Folk Festival draws more than 200,000 visitors across 3 days, filling the city with sound, dance, and food. It is a gathering that connects Virginia to the wider world, showcasing performers from across the nation and far beyond. The event began in 2005 when Richmond hosted the National Folk Festival for 3 years. The success was overwhelming, and when the national program moved on, local leaders and volunteers decided to keep the momentum alive. They created the Richmond Folk Festival as a permanent tradition. What started as a continuation has grown into an independent powerhouse of culture, recognized nationwide for its diversity and scale. On its stages, the variety is astonishing. Bluegrass bands stand beside gospel choirs. Cajun fiddlers share the spotlight with West African drummers. Indigenous performers bring songs rooted in centuries of tradition, while Latin American groups keep audiences dancing with high-energy rhythms. The festival makes no distinction between American and global traditions. It treats them all as part of the living human story. Food is as central as music. Vendors serve everything from Carolina barbecue to Caribbean jerk chicken. Visitors can sample Virginia peanuts, Chesapeake Bay oysters, and craft beers from local breweries. The festival grounds feel like a giant cultural marketplace where the sounds, smells, and tastes blend into a single sensory experience. The economic benefits are undeniable. Hotels and restaurants in Richmond fill to capacity, and the event generates millions of dollars for the region. More importantly, it builds community pride. Volunteers make up a large part of the workforce, from stage crews to guides, and their dedication is what allows the event to remain free to the public. The deeper meaning lies in the way the festival highlights tradition. It proves that folk culture is not a relic of the past, but a living force. Old songs evolve with new instruments, and ancient dances find fresh audiences. Yet the festival also raises questions. Which traditions are preserved and which fade away? How do communities balance authenticity with entertainment? These debates play out quietly in workshops, interviews, and performances. For Virginia, the Richmond Folk Festival is both a celebration and a statement. It reminds people that the state's identity is not only colonial or political, but also cultural and global. Would you like to stand by the river and hear music from around the world echo across Richmond? Or do you think festivals like this blur traditions too much to preserve them? Share your thoughts in the comments. Number 2. Housing crisis. Virginia's strong economy hides a growing contradiction. The price of housing has exploded. In Northern Virginia near Washington, the median home now sells for over $650,000. That is more than double the national median, and in Arlington, it climbs past $800,000. Rents follow the same path. A one-bedroom apartment in Fairfax or Alexandria often costs $2,000 per month, far above what most families can pay. The pressure comes from rapid growth. Since 2000, Virginia has added more than 1.5 million people. Jobs in government, military, and tech attract new residents, but new housing lags far behind. In Fairfax County alone, more than 30,000 units are estimated to be missing to meet current demand. Strict zoning laws slow projects, and local opposition blocks higher density. Every year, the gap grows wider. urban centers face different but equally severe strains. In Richmond, the average home price has doubled in just a decade, now topping $360,000. Neighborhoods once affordable for working families are being transformed by gentrification. In Norfolk and Virginia Beach, waterfront property brings soaring taxes, forcing longtime residents to leave. Homelessness has risen sharply. Between 2020 and 2023, the number of people in shelters across the state grew by nearly 15%. Rural Virginia tells another story. There, the problem is not runaway prices, but crumbling infrastructure. More than 40% of homes in some Appalachian counties were built before 1970, and few new houses replace them. Young people leave for cities, draining the tax base. The divide between wealthy suburbs and struggling towns becomes more visible each year. State leaders have tried to respond. Virginia's Housing Trust Fund was expanded to support affordable units, and some localities adopted incentives for developers. Yet the scale of the crisis dwarfs the fixes. Rising interest rates make mortgages harder, and construction costs remain high. Analysts warn that if trends continue, Virginia could follow California's path, where home ownership rates fell to record lows. The impact reaches far beyond economics. Teachers, nurses, and firefighters often commute hours because they cannot afford to live where they work. Families spend more than 30% of their income on housing, crossing the federal threshold of affordability. Young adults delay buying homes, and seniors on fixed incomes risk losing theirs. Stability, once a hallmark of Virginia life, now feels uncertain. The housing crisis is no longer a future threat. It is here, shaping choices for millions of Virginians every day. Do you believe the state can balance growth with affordability, or will Virginia's prosperity collapse under the weight of its own success? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now it's time to find out the correct answer to the quiz. Virginia is one of the nation's top producers of which seafood? A. Lobsters. B. Oysters. C. Crabs. D. Shrimp. The correct answer is B. Oysters. Number 1. Oyster pride. Few foods are tied to Virginia's identity as strongly as oysters. For centuries, the Chesapeake Bay supplied oysters to the entire East Coast, and the state became one of the largest producers in America. Today, Virginia's waters yield more than 40 million oysters each year, sustaining both a historic tradition and a modern industry. From upscale restaurants in Washington to small seafood shacks on the bay, Virginia oysters are a symbol of both pride and livelihood. Oysters thrive in the mix of fresh and salt water where rivers meet the Chesapeake. This environment gives them unique flavors that vary by region. In the salty waters of the eastern shore, they taste bold and briny. In the Rappahannock River, they take on a sweeter, buttery profile. Farmers now brand these varieties as Merroir, the seafood equivalent of wine's terroir. Visitors can follow the Virginia Oyster Trail, a route linking dozens of farms, restaurants, and coastal towns that showcase the state's shellfish heritage. The industry nearly collapsed in the 20th century. Overharvesting and disease reduced harvests to less than 1% of historic levels. Water pollution made conditions worse, but in recent decades, oyster farming, stricter regulations, and conservation projects have revived the stock. Today, aquaculture accounts for most production, and Virginia has become a national leader in sustainable shellfish farming. The comeback is often described as one of the great success stories in American seafood. The cultural centerpiece of this tradition is the Urbana Oyster Festival, held every November since 1957. The small town of Urbana, with just 500 residents, swells to more than 50,000 visitors during the two-day event. Streets fill with parades, music, and food stands serving oysters raw, roasted, fried, and stewed. The festival also crowns an Oyster Festival Queen, a local tradition that mixes pageantry with community pride. For many Virginians, the event marks the unofficial start of the holiday season. The oyster trade also fuels the economy. According to state reports, the industry contributes more than $60 million annually and supports thousands of jobs in farming, processing, and tourism. Oyster reefs play an environmental role as well, filtering millions of gallons of water daily and providing habitat for fish and crabs. This makes oysters not only a delicacy, but also a natural defense for the Chesapeake Bay. Still, challenges remain. Rising sea levels, warming waters, and continuing pollution threaten the fragile balance. Scientists warn that another collapse is possible without ongoing investment in restoration. For communities that depend on oysters, these threats are as serious as any economic downturn. For Virginia, oysters are more than food. They are a link between past and future, between ecology and culture. Would you like to taste an oyster fresh from the bay at the Urbana Festival, or do you see this tradition as one at risk in a changing world? Share your opinion in the comments. Thank you for exploring the hidden corners of Virginia with us. Click on the video you see on the screen to check out other hidden discoveries on our channel.